My name is Himanish Goel, and I welcome you all to the Everyday Consultants podcast show, where we talk about the uncertain trajectory it takes for stepping into the shoes of a consultant's mind. From adapting to constantly learn through research and develop their own theories, objectives, and opinions, for advising businesses from their area of expertise to communicate the fine line between an SME and polymath. Thanks for taking the time to join me, and let's tune into today's episode of learning more about maneuvering on this absorbing theory of understanding that meetings lingo by clearly tuning into the sound of listening. And for today's episode, when it comes to sort of attending a meeting and trying to understand what is sort of going on in that meeting's scope, it can be a little hard because you have to listen to the key points. And this is for anyone just starting the industry or who's been in the industry for a very long time. By putting that consultant's hat on and really looking at what is the key information that we're trying to hone in on, becomes crucial for helping you understand that topic or assignment that was given to you versus having to ask about it again, which doesn't look bad, but after a certain period of time, it sort of reflects back on you and what type of personality you're trying to perceive towards your coworkers and teammates. When you're joining a new project, whether they're in your consulting company or like a corporate company such as Capital One or any company that doesn't work on the consulting model, the first few weeks, 2-3 weeks, it's like when you first start school, everyone's sort of like, okay, they're getting it, they're trying to get used to the whole schedule. Like when you go from kindergarten to first grade, or you go to 5th to 6th grade, or you go from 8th to 9th grade, or 12th to college, they are getting it that you're trying to, you've just come from college or you've just come from another company and you're trying to get used to what's happening. After a certain amount of time, you really want to underline what the highlight and also I tend to put a summary section so that way it becomes easier to see what were the main points than looking through all the 30 points that we might have listed, which some of them might not be relevant, but we thought would be relevant. It's like how we would be reading a chapter for an assignment, and you know how there's some individuals, or maybe we do it ourselves as well, where you highlight the entire textbook and you realize, wait, what was the important information that we were trying to enhance on? Same way it goes with understanding a meeting's lingo. From the start of the conversation to the end of it, in which some meetings, they recap of what happens in the end, that et cetera, was supposed to happen, and this is what the takeaway was. Some don't, and usually what I've noticed is the ones that do summarize it at the end, they do talk about it in the beginning, so if you're able to catch on to it, great, but be sure to tune in to the end of it because then they rephrase everything. The ones who don't, you listen to what was in the entire meeting and make sure to tune in from beginning to end because they talk a lot of information within that time frame. And this is for meetings that you attend where there are many folks on here. And there are the other meetings where you're trying to understand a concept. And that same theory of understanding from the sound of listening gets applied. Because a lot of us, just as professionals, consultants, employees, for some of us, listening works, for some, they don't. For some, reading it works, some sort of documentation helps them better. For some, it doesn't. For some, reading it and doing it and then writing it on their own helps as well. Usually it helps everyone that writes the notes to kind of get a good base of information of what's going on. But for some people, they only write reading notes for certain areas and not all of them. because some of them, they've just got so used to it that they've understood the craft, but they're hosting that meeting, and so they don't need to write what's going to be happening over there, because they already been conducting that call for such a long time. So it really depends on what sort of sticks theory-wise, so that if you have to go back and refer to them, it becomes more easier. You're not trying to make it a task, you're not trying to prolong it, you're not trying to make it something where it's like something mind-blowing outside of this world. It's just a rough copy of notes that you can get down and edit really quickly, depending on if you need to send it to your manager or not. And that is the purpose of notes, helping you refer to a topic that you thought was important at that time or is still relevant, so that if someone asks you about it, you can go referring back, because the human brain only remembers what happens during that week from Monday to Friday. And when we come back from the refreshing weekend, depending on if we're doing a deployment or not, we then start from the scratch. But in terms of starting a new week, that's just how the human brain operates. Unfortunately, I didn't decide that. The universe has decided that. But yeah, I guess. And now coming back to my point in terms of the other meetings where you are sort of understanding a concept is a totally different lingo, because you have to stop and just kind of enhance on the key points, because you're going to be doing that assignment to perform and actually, being a part of the project in terms of contributing. So I guess my major point that I'm trying to say from all this is, based on every meeting, whether it's client, non-client, or volunteer purposes, or whatever it might be, or even like HR meetings, you accordingly take those types of notes and sort of put in theory of when do you need to put on the tough hat, when do you need to put on the consultant hat, when is it going to be the easy hat, so that way that listening approach becomes easier for you on a day-to-day basis, so you can start on a fresh note for getting ready to start the day on a strong note. But hopefully you found this information helpful, and if you think there's a friend that would definitely be helped from the topics that I talk about, be sure to refer this podcast show to them. And till then, stay broad, stay curious, and keep on striving with a consultant mindset. Until then, stay tuned for the next episode of Everyday Consultants. See ya. Please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and also leave a review of how much you enjoyed listening to Everyday Consultants. While you're at it, be sure to provide any feedback you might have on my LinkedIn posts in the comments below. And if you know of a friend who's curious about learning quick bites of information regarding the life of a consultant, then be sure to recommend my show to them, or anyone that you think might benefit from listening to it. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn, Reddit, and Twitter by searching my name on the platform. If you're interested in looking at some of my other professional content that is currently in the works, then in that case, you can take a look at my Linktree portfolio that can be found below in the description or show notes of this episode. Don't forget to tune in to listening to all episodes of Everyday Consultants and wherever you're able to find your local podcast. Until next time, stay broad, be curious, and be passionate about listening to a conversation where knowledgeable advice gets provided about the world of consulting, about a consultant in our next episode. Peace out.